This is a quick video response for Anubis2814 and his video response to me, Occupy Apathy. And you're right, I'm definitely cynical about a lot of these things. And I found your narrative interesting because it reminded me of the fact that when I was in high school, one of the reasons that I didn't get along with my peers, I guess you might say, or I had a lot of contempt for the vast majority of my peers. And part of the reason was because I believed that they were sort of psychological slaves, for lack of a better term, that they had this overachiever attitude where if they did everything that the teachers told them, if they did all their homework, if they, study hard for the SATs, that they'd get into a good college, and that there was this narrative that even going back to when I was, in middle school, that I was very skeptical of you do good in your classes, and then you get into advanced classes, and then you get into, you do good on the SATs, and then you get into a good college, and then your life is set. And I saw a lot of my peers, even growing up in a relatively small area with a small high school, I felt that for all the overachievers attempted to play by the rules, that a lot of them weren't really all that smart, that they were more concerned with their social status and being snobby and one of the cool kids, and bad people rebel and don't do what the teachers say, and good people follow the rules. And so according to your narrative, you basically say that a bunch of people from Generation Y and from Generation X believed that they could succeed just by following the rules. And I've always had a cynical attitude towards that perspective. And so it's very, very difficult for me to sort of not have this attitude of like, well, you thought you were going to play by the rules and it didn't work out. Well, could have told you that a long time ago. But I also understand that a lot of people who went to college and invested a lot in it really did want to be there. But to me, and this kind of goes back to a video that I did on college, one of the problems that I've had being in college is that back when this idea came about that college was going to be the golden ticket to the middle class, the number of college graduates in America was somewhere around 8.8, 10% in the 50s or 60s, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe it was earlier than that. And now it's steadily risen to 30%. And of course, I guess the naive belief is that, well, we should have as many college graduates as possible. But that all depends on what the function of a college degree and training is in an economy. So the more degrees in circulation, it creates the same sort of deflation as when you print more money. So part of the reason that I'm so bothered by all of the frat boys who C's get degrees and they go out drinking and they they're some of them might only be there on a scholarship from playing high school football or something like that, or they don't actually seem to have the intellect to be in college, and the standards have been lowered for them. These are part of the problem of the people who shouldn't be in college, who have no interest in learning, who the institutions realize that if we tell people that they can have that the college is a golden ticket to the middle class, then we'll get everybody buying our product, which is higher education. And at many colleges I've observed, it seems like they're very concerned with taking as much money from the students as possible, for want of a better way to put it. You have almost every college has a school. Pretty much every college has a school store, a school monetary system. Like when I went to NIU, the mascot was a husky, and so it was called the Husky Bucks. Dining dollars, and the campus cash, whatever the campus happens to call it, They force many at universities. They force freshmen to stay in dorms, which are very expensive, and the student housing surrounding college campuses is also typically much more than you would pay for an actual apartment. And college seems designed to take as much money from you as possible. Many of the classes that they require, it's not that students shouldn't learn the information. It's either that we have failed as a society to teach things that we should have taught people in high school. And so a lot of college, especially like the general education requirements, are essentially remedial, and they have lowered the standards and placed a lot of remedial aspects into higher education, because to compensate for the failure of the lower parts of the system of high school and of primary school, because to me, I honestly think that the education system in this country, the higher education system, is more concerned about making money on the selling it on the promise that college is going to just be this, you just do this and it's that simple. Of course, life is never that simple. And so it's very difficult without facts and figures for me to really know how much to sympathize and with whom to sympathize, because my honest attitude is for the people who drank their way through college and now they can't find a job, fuck them. For the people who actually studied hard in college and really wanted to do something with their career, and now that they can't get a job, that truly sucks. But it's not an either or. It's I don't take your narrative of we were sold this. I mean, I think a lot of people are just gullible and overly compliant and overly psychologically dependent on a system that's going to bring them happiness. Like, we have developed the happiness life program, and if you follow the simple steps in this happiness life program, you are assured to be happy. And that is a very strange view of the world that I couldn't see how anyone would actually believe that would pan out in reality. And I don't think that most people really view it that simple, but it is pitched that way to people in America for most of their education. You have to do good in school because then you have to get into college, and once you get into college and get a degree, everything will be fine. And now people are waking up and realizing that's not true, and that all those retards that somehow manage to graduate college and are deflating their degrees were a problem the whole time. But the interesting thing to me is that the system has failed people, and yet they're still looking to the system to save them, essentially. And part of my cynicism towards this new movement is a sort of faith in technology, because people talk about the government, the political system. Well, changing these things takes more work and energy than any prior radical movement or political movement that has wanted to change the system in the past has really been able to generate the momentum to succeed in. Actually, participating in a democratic campaign requires a lot of people putting in a lot of volunteer time. You have to get candidates, you have to get people canvassing, you have to raise money. And one of the interesting things about Occupy Wall Street, having talked to various people who spent time there and in reading about it, so not just getting my information from the media, but actually talking to people that were there, is that there was a moment where people organized and we're going to talk this out, and we're going to create our little committee groups, and they're going to talk back and forth and try and create something more than just a bunch of people sitting around. But one person that I knew that was there said that after a couple weeks, people just stopped talking, and it became like a petting zoo with people coming through and taking pictures. Another person I talked to was saying that the finance group was fighting with the rest of the group because they're essentially stingy over how they're going to dole out the money to the rest of these groups. And having all these little committees and groups and all these things, it sort of reminded me of, oddly enough, the federal government and the same sorts of problems with bureaucracy. To me, I guess maybe I have a sort of Kafka attitude towards bureaucracy that, corruption is one thing, but the system itself just can be structured to be completely inefficient. And my attitude towards government in general is that I don't believe in putting, this faith in the federal government that they're going to save everything. I think that the mayor of my city knows where the potholes are, and President Obama has no clue. And so it makes very little sense to funnel all the money to the federal government for infrastructure bills when these things, when the people on the ground, the people much closer to the problem, have a much better idea of where specifically the problems are. I mean, you can talk about the homeless people, the homeless population. I know exactly where the homeless people in my city congregate, and President Obama has no idea. And the idea of faith in centralized authority, to me, is kind of misguided in and of itself. And so I'm really skeptical of the attempts to rely on technology and with this kind of we're the new iPhone generation and we're going to figure out the way to solve these political problems. The revolution will not be televised, but it will be live streamed, apparently. And there was a meeting there was an Occupy protest in my town, and then afterwards people started having meetings based on it. And when I went to one of the meetings, there was one kid there who was, I don't know, maybe 23, 24. He had been to the Occupy protest and had just totally soaked up the game plan of the, what is it called? Not the Occupy Wall Street, the General Assembly. Here's the hand signals. It's very interesting that they're adopting sort of American Sign Language hand signals for communication in these groups. That's interesting. They're very interested in, the guy was like, we're going to start a Google user group, and really trying to utilize the most advanced technological methods of information distribution, and all these clever things like incorporating ALS. But there was a woman there that was maybe in her 60s, and when he was talking about doing a Google user group, the woman was like, I basically only know how to use my email. And to me, that sort of like typifies what I see as the problem with a lot of these movements going on now, is that in order to actually have sustained political action, there are people who are not up to speed on Google user groups or how to utilize technology beyond maybe their email. There's a generation gap in which there's this false sense of empowerment, I think, in Generation Y, because they're able to live stream a protest and create an internet spectacle out of what's going on, that this is somehow going to affect change in the world. You mentioned Arab Springs and their ability to change things, but there was more to it than that. There was general strikes. 25% unemployment is a lot different than 10%, or maybe it's maybe it's a little higher. Maybe it's somewhere around 10% in America, I think, is the current number. It took more than just getting your tent and camping out on Wall Street to make these other movements work. You have to hit them where it hurts, and that's why in my last video, I really loved the episode of South Park, Something Walmart This Way Comes, because that really, to me, sort of in a cartoon form, exemplifies Walmart is the most profitable corporation in the world. And I really think that episode sort of explains the success of Walmart and explains the consumer's role in the success of Walmart. And I love the ending where they burn down Walmart, and then they're like, oh, we're all going to go shop at Jim's drugstore, and then it shows the evolution of Jim's drugstore from the small drugstore into a chain the size of Walmart, just because everybody's shopping there, and then they have to wind up burning down Jim's drugstore too. How the masses direct their money dictate which corporations are the most powerful. So you look at the list of the top most profitable corporations, and it's Walmart, followed by oil companies and some other things on from there. And I just feel that maybe the real problem with what's been going on in the last 20 years, or with my generation, or with Generation X, Generation Y, is a kind of total psychological dependence. You go into a grocery store, and almost everything, or a convenience store, at least the ones that I see, and almost everything in there is bad for you. Soda with lots of high fructose corn syrup, and I'm kind of a hypocrite with these things too. I'll be the first to admit it, but at least I'm conscious enough to look at in a convenience store and go, okay, absolutely nothing in this store is good for me. Almost nothing in the average grocery store. A lot of it is prepackaged, low in nutrients, high in everything bad for you. Like, our entire food supply is just a lot of bad food. But it came to be that way because of the sort of broader trends of this addiction to convenience. And I also think that has to do with the stress of people's lives and having to settle for, they don't have the time to cook for themselves, or they don't have the time to prepare meals, or they were never taught how to cook, and prepackaged food rushed in to fill the void. And I almost feel like we're at a moment where we're only beginning to see what people are going to come up with to how to overcome these problems. And the most promising things to me in the Occupy protests, because underneath the surface of this entitled, we want jobs, give us jobs. I mean, I don't understand that, in the sense that if you believe that the government is corrupt and you believe that corporations run the government, who is going to give you the jobs? The government that is corrupt, or the corporations that you don't want to work for, that are structured to pay you these unlivable wages and funnel all the profits towards upper and middle management, or middle management, upper management, shareholders, that sort of thing. The most promising aspects are people who want to do more organic farming, do more local things locally, sustainability issues, dealing with how to decrease reliance on the system that we have, this centralized system of corporations, or sort of centralized food distributors. And in New York City, in places like that, I can understand that you don't really have the option to go buy from a farm, but in other places that's more plausible. And really, I guess in our entire way of life, our way of looking at the government, or our sort of psychological dependence on a centralized government as our salvation, and on the sort of consumer market, all of these things have to be reevaluated, in my opinion. And this is only sort of the beginning, and I guess maybe I just happen to have been ahead of my times, and having never been under any delusion that life was going to be, this simple matter of, you get a college degree and then you're set. To me, that just sort of underscores the psychology of compliance, which I've always had contempt for. So, yes, I am cynical, but I don't think that these problems are inaddressable, or that we should give up. A lot of people in the comments to my last video had this, well, you just think that we should give up because these problems have been around for a long time. Far from it. But I think that it starts with, people's own beliefs about the world and how they look at things. Religion is a problem, but I think that there's more subtle influences of religion that occur in our system, in even people who aren't religious necessarily, there's sort of a religious psychology embedded in a lot of this that would take a while to unpack. But I don't want to sound like I'm totally negative or totally cynical, but I guess to me what's been interesting is essentially is that Wall Street, Occupy Wall Street, is quickly running headlong into the reality that the problems take more to fix than placards and chanting and mic checks and camping out. That it's a sustained engagement in life and the political process. And what was it? It reminds me of the line in Fight Club where Tyler Durden says hitting bottom is not a weekend retreat, and no, participating in politics and changing the system is not a weekend retreat either. It's not a camping trip to your local city center. And so if you're out there and you've gotten, riled up and engaged in these issues, if you really want them to change, then you got to be prepared to be in for the long fight. And yeah, I'm going to stop rambling now, but hopefully I made some sort of coherent sense.